Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Property and Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Lanfear, and my inner lawyer always needs to say nothing in the podcast, health, legal, financial advice, but you know that by now. Holly, a very warm welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
It's an absolute pleasure, and this has been a long time in the making. We've both been pretty busy. Um, we were just talking about that offline. That this year has been a really busy year, but I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast. Um, You're a woman of many talents, which we'll get into today. Not least of which is your Shelf Improvement Book Club podcast, which in due course I want to discuss because it is a fabulous podcast. So, Holly, how do we find ourselves here? So, tell us a little bit about your background, your origin story. How do we get here?
Amazing. So, yeah, my background is definitely not property, but I'm quite known for property now and mindset and things like that. I started out in the beauty world. I started in Plymouth in the southwest, a seaside girl, and I was always looking for adventure. I've always wanted travel. Travel's been my main focal point, and how do I get to do that? So it started off with the beauty was like a trade where I can go out and about. I went on the cruise ships. It took me from Plymouth to Bristol to London, which is where I met my now husband. And I did lots of things on like Harley Street, working with doctors. I went corporate, did all of that, but actually got a little bit unwell, stressed, and not in a good place. So I took a step back and thought, right, I'm going to work for myself. And that
Mhm.
was kind of where everything changed. When you're working for yourself, you realize you're having to do a bit of everything. You also realize that, if you did get unwell, you don't actually have any backup plan. There
Mhm.
isn't a plan B. So you're like, oh, what do I do with that? And again, I was actually it was a lot more work than I actually anticipated, actually, because you're now
Mhm.
not just doing what you're good at, you're now doing everything. So I had to do all the mindset stuff. That's where books came in.
Right.
So that was where I learned about, routines and Miracle Morning, the 5 a.m. club at the very beginning, Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Mhm.
Atomic Habits, all of this stuff to keep my mindset strong. For like working on my own basically because it's lonely, it's a lonely place when you're working on your own, and I didn't have any network or anyone like that to be able to confide in at the time. But that then, because I did the Rich Dad Poor Dad, and because I was opening my eyes to all these wonderful things and hearing about how do you make money while you sleep?
Mhm.
What happens if I wasn't working? Can I still make money? And there was a seminar, went
Mhm.
to that, one of those 2 hour freebies, which led to a weekend, which led to multiple trainings and actually a lot of money that we didn't have at the time. We were definitely living in London, kind of working hard, playing hard lifestyle, but with credit cards. We were in a lot of debt, to be honest. And the training was the last little piece of money we actually had. So it was a bit of a scary time
Mhm.
transitioning, but that opened up the world of property. We had the education. It took us about a year within property for education for us to even get our first house, to even really understand it. And that was back in we did the kind of the 2 hour thing in the December 2017, but kind of started in the Feb 2018.
Yeah.
So we didn't get our first property until the keys to the first property until February 2019. So it
Mhm.
was very much like, it felt like it was like a uni degree or something, like a proper course, completely changing our mindset. And it was stressful. That year was a bit mental. I mean, I'm sure everyone's had a bit of that if they're joining property. But we were driving up to Sheffield, which is now where we live. We're now
Mhm.
here in Sheffield, so we've done a nice little tour across the whole of the UK. I'm very much one for moving. When I used to live in London, I actually moved house every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
I know everyone's like, why would you do that? I have now learned through doing the podcast and doing more books and then getting diagnosed. I'm very ADHD.
Mhm.
Makes sense with all the changes and the dopamine hits and that kind of thing. So, yeah, so that's kind of the first part of our journey. And then the second is really the property. And that's kind of
Sure.
how you kind of we've met.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. So
Yeah.
let's pause for breath there. We'll come on to the property in a minute.
Mm.
So, That's absolutely fascinating. So I'm really intrigued about the moving house thing. So you moved house every 6 months in London
Yeah,
to live in London. So
yeah.
t tell me all the places you've lived in London then.
So when I first moved to London, I was close. I was kind of in a place called Willesden Green,
Yeah.
near Dollis Hill, quite close to Wembley. So I was there, and then after that, I moved to Chiswick,
Hmm.
and then after that, I moved to Maidenhead. Went out because the job and everything. Then we came back. At that point, that's when Nick moved in because it was kind of like a. We met in London, but it's like I'm not able to do my. I covered with my job. I was an area manager, so
Hmm.
when I lived in Chiswick, I actually covered all the way to the very tip of Cornwall and all the way to the whole of the south of Wales. And I'd be doing 8 hours driving a day, 4 hour meetings, and then I had to do paperwork. So it was really intense. And I was like, to get out of London was just a nightmare. So Chiswick was kind of the gateway. And then I was like, still not enough. So moved, wanted to do like Reading or Maidenhead. So that's when Nick moved in with me. And then quite quickly after that, we missed London. So we went back in and we were in a place called New Southgate.
Yeah.
And then after New Southgate, it was North Finchley.
Yeah.
And then not too long after that, it was Sheffield. So it was very much
Yeah. Yeah.
all over. But I loved it. Nick hates it because I guess he's more the removal man, isn't he?
Yeah.
Um, get your car, fill it, get the van. For me, I just loved the change of the scenery. For me, it was excitement, a new area, a new
And it,
place, a new
I mean,
home.
not the cheapest thing to do as well. Like, like the moving costs are pretty horrendous, aren't they? So
Yeah,
that
but at that time, before I've kind of moved in with Nick, it was like HMO living. So a lot
yeah,
of it could just fit in a car or
got
two
you.
cars type thing.
Yeah.
So it was never massive chaos. But moving from Bristol to London was, quite big, and moving from Plymouth to Bristol was as well. And all
Yeah.
of those things were, yeah, even when in Bristol, when I moved to Bristol, after 6 months, I moved to a second place in Bristol.
Okay.
And I was like, there's a pattern here. But the reason why I moved in the Bristol one was because my car actually broke down. And where I lived, there wasn't a bus route to where I needed to be. And I couldn't fix my car in time and I couldn't really get there. So I just moved really quickly within the space of like 4 days. I managed to find a place, hop
Mhm.
into another place where in Portishead, where I didn't actually need a car at all. So it kind of all worked out in a really weird way. So
Um,
yeah.
As things do from time to time. So we're going to talk about because obviously you and Nick not only are you happily married, but you also congratulations on that fairly recently.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
2 years now, which is crazy because it feels like yesterday. Yeah.
Um, so we're gonna. So you work together as well, and
Yeah.
you're life partners, and obviously Liz and I work together, and we're life partners as well, and that
Yeah.
brings its own opportunities and challenges as well. Maybe we can have to
Sure does.
chat about that in due course. But where did you meet Nick? Just out of curiosity.
Through friends, I was actually just about to move back to Plymouth.
Right.
I was grafting really hard. It was one of those where I was working and not really living, and
Yeah.
with the cost of living in London, and it was like I was just so lonely, and it wasn't worth the money. And I just thought,
Mhm.
what am I doing? And I spoke to a friend of mine who's one of my bridesmaids, very good friend, and she was like, "Why didn't you hang out with Claire, who was at my hen do? She
Mhm.
lives in London." And I was a bit like, oh, but I've only met her once. I was like, okay, I'll get in touch. And there was probably about 2 or 3 occasions I probably should have bumped into Nick when I was meeting up with her because
Okay.
her husband is his best friend who became his best man. And he was his best man for him. So they got married and Nick's
Mhm.
best, so it all kind of interlinked. So it was a cheese and wine party. And I can't say no to a cheese and wine party. And that's
Your
where we
Achilles
met.
heel is
It is. It is.
cool. Okay. Okay. Well, if we have time, we'll come back to that. So it sounds like you got a bit burnt out in corporate life.
Very much so, very much so. And unfortunately, I think we're not a stranger to it for anyone really. The boss that we had at the time was a bit what you would call a bully.
Right.
And pretty much everyone was leaving left, right, and center, and the company didn't seem to realize it was this one individual.
Yeah.
And no matter how much I actually tried to fight it and just say, look, I'm not ganging up here, but can you not see a pattern? And
Yeah.
very much once everybody had left and they had all newbies, they realized that pattern wasn't changing. So I think they then did move that person on. But it's a shame because it was so good at the time, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just
yeah.
one person kind of spoilt it really.
And that's not uncommon either.
Mm,
You look
I
at
hear
like
it a lot.
the data, like workplace data, and having um, you know, maybe a less than competent or I don't know, like I don't want to kind of like necessarily jump on the buzzwords of like the current thing of like being toxic or anything, but
Yeah,
like let's say you've got like a challenging or less than competent role manager, like that is very, very often the reason that people leave. And when they
yeah,
hand their notice in, there's no talking them back from the edge, which is a challenge. And if you think about how expensive it is to train people up,
yeah,
retention's like an enormous thing.
yeah,
It takes years for people to bed into roles often. They take a lot of IP with them when they go,
yeah.
in their own heads, they have all those connections. Um,
Well, that's it. Well, this was a very sales environment, but customer relationship based. So we were going into the clinics within Harley Street and working with the doctors and the surgeons. So it's a like no trust again, isn't it? And
yeah,
as soon as that's gone, it's like, who's this new person that doesn't know what they're talking about?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, they don't have time either. They're quite, they're very much like, we've got surgery in a second. We've got this. We
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have, get to the point. And they're like, oh. So it was kind of, it's frustrating because we just think, oh, it's so, it could have been different. But at the same time, I'm a massive believer that you need to be pushed out of certain things to find this. I would never
yeah,
have been
yeah, yeah, yeah,
here if those things didn't happen. So you
totally.
kind of think, I accept it and I'm grateful in a way. But at the time, it's frustrating.
There's an emerging theme of the podcast, which is people having what's described in the book, the E Myth, as the entrepreneurial seizure. So people have got a perfectly good career, and then something happens, and they just go like, "I cannot do this for a day longer," and they start their entrepreneurial journey, which obviously we've heard you describe. So you kind of went within both feet by the sounds of it into
Yeah.
kind of retraining yourself. You touched on all like the classic books that people would listen to at that stage, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and you know,
Yeah.
um, Robert Kiyosaki's being like foretelling the end of the world for a very long time. But that is a brilliant book, and it does help you see the world differently in terms of
Yeah.
your role in the world and the different capacities you can have as an employee, a freelancer, business owner, investor.
Yeah.
Like that model just in itself is worth that book 1,000 times. And you did, like many of us have done, certainly, definitely Liz and I have done this, you invested eye-watering amounts of money, in your kind of education, often at a
Yeah.
time where you don't really have those resources.
Yeah.
Um, which is either ridiculously stupid or it's the Viking thing of, well, burn the boats.
Yes.
If you
Yeah.
make meaningful change, commit so hard to something that it's, well, we have to make this work now.
And I do believe that was kind of the reason why it did and had to. Like we felt like our backs were against the wall. There was definitely an element where a lot of that money was more kind of Nick's and it was mine, and I was the one on the ground doing it,
Mhm.
while he was kind of still working in his corporate to support us a little bit. So I felt there was a lot of pressure on me to actually get that money back at a minimum.
Yeah.
Very stressful. I probably was crying every other week or
Wow.
every week. I remember it being a whole year of just, what the hell are we doing? And when we finally moved to Sheffield, it was still just as intense. It was almost like, why won't it work? Why is nothing happening? You're doing the do, you're doing
Yeah.
everything right.
Yeah.
And then finally we kind of we got the offer accepted as the first one, like yes, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
even then, when we first got that cash flow, £400 profit at the end of all the outgoings every month, it was like, yay, we've got money coming in. Oh, but it has to go pay for the accountant and
Yeah.
compliance and our business costs and stuff. So you're like, so we don't have any money still.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, and now we've got angel investors.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, okay. Now we need to obviously get more and more. And then we were like, right, I need to do. So I went into sourcing and managing. I did pretty much every job you can think of in property
Mhm.
to ensure that we could survive. But to be honest, one of the kind of checklist. And I always recommend this to people if you can. Look at ways of how you can help in a different way. For example, just the rent alone in London was £1,550 a month. But moving to Sheffield, we were saving £1,000 a month on rent. So things like that, if you can,
Mhm.
we just did everything possible to just rein in one way and try and build in another just to kind of get back. But we had to.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. I don't want to like reference every single book you've ever had on your podcast. This podcast would go on for days, but that is like, you can take a lot of inspiration from the psychology of money,
Yeah,
in that respect, and that feeds
I love that
into
book.
an area that I'm really interested with and interested in and talk to people a lot about is the concept of the FIRE movement. Financial independence, retire early, not so that you can kind of not really from the kind of like firing your boss and all that kind of aspect, but more that you can create financial independence and just have different choices. Like I know people who continue with their roles because they love them. They like
Yeah,
like a friend of mine's a photographer. He loves being a photographer, but he's
amazing.
obviously also loving the stuff he does elsewhere. Um, so I definitely think you've planted a good seed there in terms of, a lot of financial independence is not just a revenue model, it's also like what your cost base is. You know,
Yeah.
if your Range Rover is £1,000 a month and your rent is £2,000 a month and you have all the expensive habits,
Hmm.
um, you just have such a bigger hurdle to overcome.
Yeah.
Um, Whereby, particularly if you live in the regions, particularly the north, like, you can really reduce your cost base down, which just speeds up the process
Yeah.
enormously.
Definitely. And actually, I've very much changed my opinion because when I was back doing all the training 7 years ago now, they do really drill it into you, like leave the job, like the job and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I learned quite quickly is that I left a job that I actually, a career that I actually loved.
Hmm.
And, you know, and not everyone's a bit like shocked when I say this, but I don't enjoy property at all. I don't.
Interesting.
And I'm like, I was really gutted actually. I was like, I'm basically just exchanged one job for another job
Hmm.
when really I could have, I didn't really know at the time, I could have kept doing what I loved doing
Hmm.
and built this along on the side. But in a way, we kind of needed boots on the ground initially to kind of catapult out and do the property stuff. And, I'll forever be grateful because it's a vehicle to the life that we achieved through it. Like what we've managed to get, I wouldn't have got through my job, if that makes sense. So now I'm always, when I talk to people, especially people new in the industry and kind of dabbling or trying to figure stuff out, I'm like, if you do actually love what you do,
Hmm.
find a way where you can kind of do both. Don't just drop it. Because it's so hard. Like I would say I'm a little bit unemployable now. If ever I try and look at going back into anything like that, they go, why? Why would
Hmm.
you want to? And it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
because I enjoy it. Like life isn't just about the money side, especially when you get to a level where, you've got some investments. You kind of want to do the fun stuff too.
100%. I would say that's the main point.
Exactly. But all my life I've just been like money, 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 money while I sleep, work, work, work. And when you go into this kind of property world, it's so all consuming, I found.
Hmm.
And like I said, it was just about surviving and we managed it, we did it. But I think I know one of your kind of questions later is like, what's next? And I'm like, just happiness, like balance again. Doesn't
Hmm.
always have to be so extreme. So I've learned that, and I'm all about if you like your job, stay in a job. You don't have to be leaving it. It's there's a lot to be said about that stability, security, enjoyment, showing
Definitely.
up, and then being able to go home and switch off. Because
Yeah, yeah.
self-employed, never switch off.
Very much so. And it's a good illustration of like financial resilience as well. Is if it within an eco, so I tend to think of people as kind of ecosystems. And obviously if there's more than one of you, that's an
Mm,
ecosystem in itself. And one of the like obvious um things that works really well is if you can have somebody who can hang on to their job for as
mm,
long as possible while you're building the ecosystem. it just gives that sanity and breathing space
Yeah.
rather than, as you just, you know, described, like sack, you know, get rid of the job and all the rest of it. Like, I actually think that's quite damaging for people because when they jump too soon, the
Yeah.
level of stress that they're experiencing is just off the scale. And
Yeah.
I think it's not, as you've described, not really necessary. If you think about, you could go part-time or you could go
Hmm.
fraction, you know, even further into like fractional work.
Hmm.
Um, I've worked with people who've gone from full-time jobs to part-time jobs, and the actual net change in their salaries has actually not been as much as you think because of the impact of
Hmm.
taxation. And then they've gone freelance and they've earned more freelance doing less hours than they were when they're part-time. Teachers,
Yeah.
for example, it's unbelievable how the numbers work. It just takes a bit of time to look at them. Um,
Yeah.
so then we get into the property stuff.
Hmm.
And I think anybody in the first 5 years of property can really relate to your description of it being unbelievably stressful. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that I can, like, you know, I look back at those days and they were some of the darkest, most difficult days that we've ever had. Unbelievable. Um, and the, you know, it's interesting that you kind of described what I think you were trying to present as like a slow start. You know, we did our
Yeah.
training in 2017, didn't get our keys till 2019.
Mm.
I think that's an experience that most people have, and it's that interesting model, isn't it? Where it's like a chart that's going, the price is going, or the output is going just sort of sideways, sideways, sideways,
Hmm.
often for months and maybe even years. And then suddenly there's this hockey stick and everything suddenly comes together. And
Yeah.
often
Yeah.
people comment and say, like, you know, overnight success. Uh, uh,
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, hmm.
yeah, if only. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because in that period where it's going sideways, that's where all the sane people give up because they're
Yeah.
sane people because they realize this is so unpleasant.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and do something else, and
Yeah.
it is that Steve Jobs thing, and you do have to be a little bit nuts to
Yeah.
hang in there.
Or not as desperate. Like I say, we were so desperate at that point, we couldn't really go back. We had put,
Yeah,
like you say, we burnt the boats type thing.
yeah,
We were like, it has to work now. Whereas I think people that are a little bit more comfortable, maybe they're
yeah.
not as strained, or even, no disrespect to anybody out there doing courses that are far cheaper than what they used to be, but the
Hmm.
ones that aren't that expensive anymore, I don't feel is enough.
Hmm.
A lot of people spend like a grand or two, but it's not enough for them to go, oh yeah, I need to do that tonight. They'll still probably watch telly or something in
Yeah,
their life would be more important. And then it doesn't
yeah,
really get done and then it gets put on the back burner. Like there
yeah,
isn't that intensity or anything. There's no urgency with it, you
yeah.
know? And I just think that's possibly why some people drop off. But it's again, it's like that 1% thing, isn't it? If I look back to everybody that was in that room, I only know one other person still doing property based on our little group, so to speak. And then if you go out to the bigger network that we were in, again, I probably only know about six. And there was
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah, I think my numbers would be roughly the same.
Yeah.
I think it's a mentor of mine was recently saying that one of the reasons he thinks that people don't make progress is the word that you have just mentioned, which a few minutes ago, which is comfort. So,
Mm,
you know, he wasn't having a pop at people, but he was saying, like, his experience was that um, people don't push through because they have
mm,
a reasonable level of comfort. And
yeah.
actually, if they were slightly more uncomfortable in their lives, they probably would make a bit
Yeah.
more progress. But so let's talk property. So
Yeah.
I loved. So we're segueing to property whilst echoing in our ears are the words "I don't like property."
Yeah. Well, I didn't have time back then to really think I don't like this. And one amazing thing actually, because of my personality, I mean, Surrounded by Idiots, if you've read that book, Personality Traits, I was really good at it. Like I was
Okay.
so good at like because it is a people thing and I'm a very people person. So I built relationships really quickly,
Mhm.
built trust really quickly, and was able to yeah, get agents on side, investors on side. I could just identify what works and didn't work. So I was quite good with that. I had the support of Nick, who, with his IT background, created the wonderful property pipeline system,
Yeah. Yeah.
which we had then launched in lockdown. So we started using it from 2018 up until 2020,
Hmm.
because I'd come back every day after a view and going, if only there was this, or if only there was
Hmm.
this calculator, it would speed up the process. And it just got to a point where not only did I have an eye, I was having a system, a tool
Hmm.
that just sped things up. I was able to go into viewings and it'll be on for like 90. I know what I would like to offer. 80 would work. It works really well. I go in, I build the relationship with the owner. And then I literally go, is there any wiggle room on this? And they go, well, we could do 80. I'm like, perfect. Let's shake on that. And I
Hmm.
would literally get the offer accepted right there and then. So
Nice.
it was this rapport. It was really, there was a fire in my belly. We had a goal, an end in mind, without
Yeah.
having the 5-year goal again. I think it's that kind of, how can you know the way without knowing kind of the end result? You've got to put that sat nav in, right? The
Yeah, definitely.
destination. So we knew what we wanted.
Hmm.
Dream wedding, 6 months traveling.
Yeah.
What do we need for that? We need a
Hmm.
minimum of 3K a month coming in as a cash flow, and we need a lot of capital to catapult us there. So everything I was doing was so hyper, again, ADHD potentially,
Yeah.
hyper focused on that's the goal.
Mhm.
We're very good at weekly, monthly meetings and systemizing, and it was just go, 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 basically. I was a little
Mhm.
bit like a robot at one point. But yeah, first year hard, and then like you say, once kind of that momentum started going, it was yeah, crazy, good
Mhm.
crazy. But also there's a lot of things that came with it that I was like, ooh. And now that I don't necessarily need it as much, there is not that kind of oh, we need to get there. It's more like, oh, well, I don't really enjoy that as much. I think I'll step away from that bit. At least I can pick and choose now.
Mhm.
At the time, it was like whatever works and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
head
Yeah, yeah.
down. So again, I think there's a combination between, it's not like I hate it. It's just I would prefer to do other things,
Yeah.
but I'm good at it. So it's kind of like, and I've been doing it now for 7 years, and I keep saying, Nick, you take over type thing. But he loves his IT. So he came out for about a year and he was like still doing contractual IT stuff. So, and he was doing property, but it was like, it's more your thing.
Hmm.
So we,
And I think it's your honesty is refreshing because I think a lot of people in property don't necessarily love property.
yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I know people who do. I've got friends who, they do their own rip outs and they absolutely love it, and
Mm,
like they love knocking around houses, and they're very good at it as well. Um,
nice.
but I also think there are a surprising number of people who it makes sense. It's one of the only things since the 1970s that ordinary people can have a go at and preserve their wealth and make lifestyle businesses and outrun inflation. Um, it's kind of which is why it's so much in the British psyche as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So bring us up to the here and now. So I mean, you have so much going on. Give us like a bit of an overview of the current ecosystem.
Yeah. So I guess it's a bit different. We're in a transitional period. So once we got back from the 6 months traveling last year, so we've been back a year. So much. I guess I'm kind of really skipping a massive part of the story there, but it's probably more about recalibrating. Like I
Yeah.
say, like trying to find ways because we've always sourced, we've always supported a refurb cord and supported investors that aren't in the area. Um, we used to do the management and stuff like that, but we're kind of stripping things away now.
Yeah.
So we're only really focusing in on our property pipeline customers, supporting them to the fullest. So we've got lots of users and training providers and companies that use our system. So we really
Hmm.
want to focus in on that. I've obviously got the podcast, which
Hmm.
now, I mean, within like literally something like 2 weeks, it went from 10,500 listeners a month to over 26 7,500 listeners a month. It's just kind of gone quite big. And so we're really putting some focus into that to ensure that our listeners, get the most out of it, really. So they're
Mhm.
the two things. And then the last third thing really would be focusing on our kind of portfolio. We've always helped people with
Mhm.
theirs, which has obviously helped with ours. And we
Mhm.
do have a portfolio, but we kind of want to now focus in a little bit more. We've had a SAS pension that we really want to be using that we haven't
Okay.
used.
Yeah.
We want to do some more buy to lets. We want to definitely get a bit more capital. It's all about that balance. We did a lot of growth in the 5 years. Now I think we need to do a bit more stability,
Yeah.
with growth, but probably not as fast as it was before. Like I think in less than 16 months we did like 44 properties.
That's incredible.
It's insane. Um, and helped so many people. But now it's like, right, we'll stick with focusing on, a couple a year for us, helping, investors work with the podcast and just kind of tone down that crazy for us for a little bit because it has
Definitely.
been full on. Yeah.
And like kudos to you to be able to do that many properties in that time frame is
Yeah.
in itself a great endorsement of your pipeline product because you, it's only with systemization that you can move at those speeds. Like,
Yeah.
back in the day when Liz and I were throwing out like HMO every month, like a metronome, the
Yeah.
only reason we could do it is because the business was so systemized. I say to people, I could walk into a refurb and it was identical to every other refurb we were doing that
Yeah.
year.
Cookie
Uh,
cutting.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and so you could blindfold somebody, take them into a house, and say, "Which house is this?" And for a few seconds, it would take them a while to kind of work out where they were. Like,
Yeah.
they all looked exactly the same. So obviously, the system must work because the, doing things at that scale is when typically businesses which aren't systemized, the wheels come off and everything
Yeah.
unfortunately goes a bit pear-shaped because
Yeah.
you know they just kind of choke on the volume of their activity.
I
Um,
think as well, it is the team. We were so, because of, I guess, the connections and, you know, I feel like the relationships that I was building, we had such reliable people on our team. We definitely kissed a few frogs, but
yeah,
without the team and without obviously the system as well, like it was more the pipeline and the team.
yeah,
So it was, and boots on ground. I was in my location. Again, if
yeah,
I wasn't in my location, so if anyone's now listening to this thinking, oh, systems, yes, systems is good, but if you're not there to kind of keep a tab on things and, you don't have that trusted team in place that can literally, I mean, we had a leak on Friday. We weren't even here. We were down in Cornwall
mhm,
and our guy went straight over there right away, made it safe.
yeah,
Just all the things that you kind of need to happen when you're not there as well.
yeah, yeah,
So I do think that played a massive role back then. For sure, to be able to
mhm,
scale like that. And it wasn't just 44 properties for us. It was like we had the sourcing business, we had the management business, we had our own, we had the refurb cord. So it was just a bit of everything. It was
yeah,
mental. I wish it was cookie cutting, but because I work with so many people, everyone
yeah.
wanted different looks. I was
Okay.
like,
Oh, no.
tiles for the so I was definitely kept on my toes.
And it's interesting, like these conversations that we're having in this series. It's that there's another theme which is developing that people kind of take on a lot and they're doing all kinds of different things, and then they reach kind of this realization that actually what they want is simplification and to focus on
Yes.
less. And
Yes.
they kind of drill down into offering, like, so for example, we sold our property management company, and there was loads of things we stopped doing, loads of
Hmm.
corporate stuff we stopped doing, and we drilled down into like the essence of what it was that we wanted, for the long term. And
Yeah.
that's, you've kind of alluded to that, and that's a theme that's been going on in this series. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I saw a really interesting post, and it might have been the catalyst for pinging you the message to revisit the podcast idea. Was I've got a real sense that you're in this transitional period and that you're kind of reinventing or refocusing. I saw that you were selling a couple of HMOs, you were taking management back of a project that you were.
Yes. Yeah.
So talk us a little bit through, because I think that's a valuable thing to do, and I can say that this year that's been a massive thing for us. We've been
Yeah.
refocusing our efforts. So talk, what changes are you making?
Yeah, so the reason for selling the HMOs was because that when we first bought them, it was actually in lockdown with our JV partners. And our
Yeah,
JV partners come to us and said, we want to buy down in Cornwall, we want to change strategies, so we'd like to sell them. So we had an opportunity to potentially buy them out, but when we looked at all the numbers, it just made sense just to sell, clean slate, move
yeah,
on. And I think, they've been great JV partners, but I think going forward, it just makes more sense to do flips with JVs
yeah.
than it is long term because again all of our wants and kind of strategies in our life changes, so things will always change. So for me and Nick, we would have loved to have kept them,
Hmm.
if that makes sense, with
Yeah.
them, but it just didn't work out that way. So we found buyers. That's in the process of selling. The like I said, we're stopping the kind of the sourcing. We're kind of like we are taking back management of SAs, but that's because the way that the industry is in Sheffield. I don't know about other people at the moment with SA. Very
Hmm.
saturated. Pretty much the only people that were making the money. It used to make us loads of money. It was actually the main thing that actually got us traveling.
Right.
It was making like about 3K a month.
Right.
After all outgoings, it was brilliant. House, three flats. But with the fact that we were outsourcing the management,
Hmm.
it's now pretty much eaten into our profits.
Yeah.
And we're back from traveling, so we're like, right, let's do the transition of slowly taking that back. That's
Hmm.
not too difficult. We can focus on our own portfolio.
Hmm.
So that's why we're doing that. So that kind of changed everything based on what's going on out there. Um, and then the rest just tick over and do its own thing, really. We've got buy to lets and things like that. And like I said before, I just want to focus now on happiness,
Yeah. Nice.
peace and
Yeah.
happiness. I think to kind of get a really good understanding of who I am before, as you know, with the moving every 6 months, and I was
Hmm.
obsessed about travel. I genuinely believed before we went traveling that I was never going to come back,
Hmm.
that it was a taster of retirement and I knew
Yeah.
exactly what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
And it was nothing what I thought it was going to be like. And it completely shocked me. Like, literally to the point where I was like, well, I thought that was it. What do I do now? So I really have been trying to find myself because I just thought that was me, but it isn't me.
Mhm.
I was bored. Um, I was grateful for the experience. I was sat in paradise, but I just thought I could do that for years on end. I thought that was retirement for the future, something to look forward to. And then once I realized that isn't my future, I'm like, now what?
Mhm.
What do I do? So
Yeah.
it has been very much about finding peace. And because I was so chaotic and extreme before, I'm now like, I don't mind like the odd little holiday and a bit
Mhm.
of property and, you know, like just a bit calmer, which is so
Mhm.
unusual, I think, for very ADHD Holly. But I'm learning, maybe it's coming with age. I'm 40 next year. So maybe it's more like I'm settling into my peace, you know? It's kind of like a
Oh.
new era of Holly.
Well, I think that's fantastic. I think everybody should have the opportunity to do like a little mini retirement to see what they make of it, because I
Yeah.
think not necessarily in all cases, but I think in most cases people realize it may not be what they were actually looking for. I mean, you on your podcast, I mean, you have seemed to have collected some of the best books ever written, not least of which is Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week. And the
I
big thing,
wish I read that before. I wish I read that before. I read it after. Carry on,
but
sorry.
you have just described what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So it is that thing of well, not so when I sold my property management business, I had this hiatus where I didn't have, and I stopped doing loads of corporate speaking gigs and just like focused on my own stuff. And I got this luxury spa membership, which I would go to, and I'd float around in this spa. And just as you have described, eventually I got bored,
Yeah.
and I thought, like, this isn't what it's about. Like, this isn't the thing that I was moving towards.
Mm,
Um, so that certainly resonates. I also, and you've seen me speak, so you'll be familiar with this. Like, I lost a really good friend of mine in property, like, and I was so shocked to have lost him because he was so young,
yeah.
that I had that kind of waking up moment of what is it that this is actually about? And lying on the beach is not the answer. That's not what we're heading for. And I've come to the conclusion that it's about meaningful work, that it's about finding people you want to serve. So in your case, you've got your property pipeline clients. It's finding a tribe that you want to serve and do
Yeah.
it forever. And you've talked about peace, you've talked about fun.
Yeah.
It's incorporating that into daily life. So I think your path is awesome. What I would also say about Tim Ferriss is that he advocates this thing that when we read the book, Liz and I, we pretty much immediately adopted, which is do mini retirements.
Yeah, that when I heard that, I was like, that is a bit of me.
Yeah,
That will be now forever my life because
yeah,
I can't just, I genuinely thought by the time I was 40, 45, on a beach, traveling forever and ever and ever, have a, a pipeline portfolio to cover it. But like say, there was no purpose, no
yeah,
passion.
yeah,
You just become a little bit of like just empty, really.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when I read that after the traveling, I was like, yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I guess the longest I would do is like a 2 to 3 month travel if I really want to explore somewhere.
yeah.
But to do my life, I would rather if I'm more fulfilled with reading books on and talking about them on a podcast
Hmm.
and discussions and helping people and all the things that we start to realize. At first it was all about the money making and it was a byproduct of that I was good at. Now it's actually genuinely how can I help? How can,
Hmm.
all these good things now make me feel good?
Hmm.
But I guess sometimes you do need to step away and have that time to realize that as
Oh,
well.
definitely. Or it's
So
either time or like a catastrophic life event.
yeah,
Either
exactly.
one of the two.
Exactly.
Um, um, Quick question for you. So, if you had to recommend one book from your long list of books that you've covered in the Self Improvement Book Club podcast,
Mm.
um, which one book would you take us to?
I still always go back to Atomic Habits.
Really?
I
Okay.
do. I just
Cool.
love it. And I still live by that. That and Surrounded by Idiots. Surrounded by Idiots, I just think is awesome because again, it's great whenever you kind of not understanding somebody or when someone's reacting in certain ways, you can kind of understand it through personality traits and stuff. So then you don't get so, not necessarily like I get offended easily, but you can go, well, that makes sense because that's I expected that reaction or whatever. But no, I think Atomic Habits, and I know that might sound a bit boring, but I love them all. Like Tim Ferriss was really inspirational, The Psychology of Money. We've done so many. We're actually really enjoying right now Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by 50
Mhm,
Cent.
mhm,
Never in a million years did we think that. But his take on mindset and business and success is super different to pretty much all
mhm.
the authors of all the books we've covered so far. And it's quite nice to have that, like that kind of opposite view on things.
Yeah, yeah.
Because everything can get a little bit samey, but just said in a different way.
Yes.
Um, but as you know, with the book club, it's more about taking one thing and actioning something rather than just reading as many books as we can. Like, what can we take away? And I would say The Atomic Habits is the one that I've really taken away.
And if you could, this is obviously an unfair question. If you could summarize that book in a sentence, what would it be?
I would say it helps reduce overwhelm. Like it really, for me, it just helps break it all back down more. So you can do more,
Hmm.
but like habit stacking.
Hmm.
Great, I can do more, but in a way that I'm not overwhelmed. And it's about structure and yeah, it's a trying to keep it as a sentence. It's a good tool book.
Cool. We'll take that. And I think we've touched on burnout in this chat, and also we've touched,
Mm,
you've mentioned overwhelm. I would say we have an epidemic of both of those things throughout society, and particularly obviously in entrepreneurship, but I think everybody's definitely in that zone. So I normally ask the question of a life lesson, but I feel in the way you've already given the life lesson, which is
Yeah.
don't strive to retire to the beach because maybe that's not what you're
Yeah.
looking for.
But again, if you haven't tried it, definitely try it. But yeah, I would say like you there was no one that could tell me different before.
Yeah.
You've there's certain things in life that you just have to experience for yourself. And a lot of people even now are like, you're nuts. And I'm like, literally, it's actually quite hard to sit on a beach drinking pina coladas 100% of the time for 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
there's not much else to do.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
it's good.
so but beautiful, best time of my life, but very eye-opening.
I love that. I think it's fantastic. This is a great lesson for the podcast.
Yeah.
Um, so where do we go from here? Like, what's the direction of travel?
More properties,
Mm,
but again, like you say, it's just we're niching down. I think, we at one point we had like seven companies,
yeah.
seven businesses. So now it's kind of niched down to three, more
And
manageable chunks.
and if you had to kind of give us a trade idea within property, like what would where do you think people should be allocating capital
Mm.
to now?
It's a tough one. In the sense of strategy, I think a lot of people are quite scared about buy-to-lets, but I still think they're the classic,
Yeah.
you know, I know it's a bit boring and like, but safety net, I still think there's security in it, and I think that they are good to go with. I'm
Mhm.
hearing loads of people doing commercial, but I think, do you know what? If I was to start now, depending on obviously if you like it or not, I
Mhm.
would actually be the middleman, be the managing agent again. Because
Mhm.
like I was saying, with even the SAs, we were starting to see less of a profit as the investor, but the
Mhm.
management agents got paid every month.
Yeah, 100%. So
So
I think there's some real wisdom in there. Like, we've obviously got the Renters' Rights Act, which has now come in. A lot of fear in the
yeah,
marketplace, but that is often where opportunity lies, particularly if
yeah.
you commit to a decade. You say, look, we're going to stick this out for a decade,
Hmm.
um, because as my last podcast guest said, don't follow the herd, and people always need to live in houses. And
Always.
so, like, and look at one of my other podcast guests was talking about the fact that we're making less houses now than we were in the 1960s, which makes no sense at all. So I think that's a
Exactly.
great recommendation. And I think also your suggestion about, being the middleman, that I think is a really shrewd decision. Like, I know, part of the things that I do with people is build lifestyle businesses around the property world, whether
Mm,
they're interiors designers or refurb managers or whatever they might be, because you can make a fantastic living,
yeah.
often without taking the level of risk that you need to by building a portfolio, if that's kind of not your thing. For example, if you have an aversion to debt, which is understandable, maybe that's not your thing to go and load up on millions of pounds worth of debt. And there's other
Course.
things you can do. Um,
Yeah.
we've touched upon health, so health is wealth. As we bring this to a conclusion,
Yeah.
as a woman who's clearly ridden the roller coaster, and I have to say as well, like bringing Nick into the conversation, like he is ripped, like he is.
No, not bad for 46.
No way. What's it?
Yeah.
So he is obviously in great shape. So the two of you clearly are doing something right. So talk
Yeah.
us through that, like health as well.
I've always been one for, like you say, the spas and stuff like that, but I don't do it enough. So at home, it would be again the peace thing. I've just got newly actually, this is a new thing, the walking pad, very trendy at the moment,
Hmm.
especially for winter. Loving that.
Yeah.
But I've always been one. We've always done like once a week weights.
Yeah.
I love my yoga.
Hmm.
And the third thing is really just sat with my little bunnies. I've got two little fluffy bunny babies, and I
Oh,
just sit, and that's like my meditation, really, just my calm in the world. On my little bean bag, they're waiting for me on their little mat, sat there going, "Come on, sit down," and I'll sit there with my nice coffee and good old hour strokes and
oh.
grounding with my little fluffy little babies.
So you're like fully united with the animal kingdom.
Oh, I'm an animal person. That's for me. They're my babes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fascinating, I think, the dynamic between people and animals. There are some people who just, I'm thinking of a particular friend of mine,
Yeah.
they have an extraordinary connection with the animal world. It's really fascinating. Like some
Yeah.
people, I think, and you're obviously one of them, like that's the kind of the frequency that they can operate on. They can communicate with animals
Yeah.
and feel at peace with
They're
them.
like my little shadow. They're indoor bunnies, so they're
Wow.
just mini little dogs. You know, they're so cute. But in general, like if you love animals, if you haven't done it already, we did it for our honeymoon. Go on a
Mhm.
safari.
Okay.
Wow, literally out of everywhere we've been, and we have been to quite a lot of places now, that is top of the list. Just unreal. Nick's not a crier, but we were both crying leaving. We didn't
Oh,
want to leave. It was so overwhelmingly emotionally beautiful. So if you get a chance to do some
there you go.
safaris in
Do a
Africa,
safari.
please do it.
And in terms of the rabbits, because rabbits are prey animals, are they affectionate?
Very, very. They're basically they kind of call them like little what do you call I can't think of the word actually. You have to have them in pairs. They need to be in the little group animals. They're like little
Okay.
families. So
Yeah.
I forget the word. I've gone. It's left me. But they act like mini dogs. So you can, if I say up, they'll go on the hind legs for a treat. I can make them do circles.
Wow.
If I open the fridge with the god of light, they know it means greens, fresh greens.
The
They have
god
a
of
root.
light.
The
I
god
like
of
that.
light. Oh, it's just this shining on them. They're like excited, and they'll do when they do circles around you. It means that they're bonding with you, that they love you.
Oh,
Yeah, they're adorable, and they're like you don't have to walk them.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're not as expensive. You can leave them for a couple of days with lots of hay and food and water, and they're good. They go into little hibernation mode, so it's really handy for us doing our traveling, but
Yeah.
at least still have a little love in our home.
Yeah. Fabulous.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
they're really clever.
So you've sold us some bunnies. We're all going to go out and get a bunny rabbit.
Yes, they're
Um,
not just for Christmas or Easter, guys.
um, so where should we send the good people who have enjoyed listening to you on the podcast? Where should we send them?
Oh, thank you. So I guess on Instagram's a really good place. It's Holly Osborn Property. On there, there's like a link tree which will send you to Property Pipeline, the book club. Anything that you kind of want to know will be found on my Insta. I have a LinkedIn as well, Holly Osborn Jennings,
Mhm.
um, and I'm also on Facebook. But all those links will be there if you get on one of those.
Amazing. Right. So we'll put the Insta link. That'll take us to the link tree. The link tree will take us everywhere.
Or I can give you the link tree link if that's the easiest one, and then yeah.
I'll pop a Insta in. It'd be cool. That'd be excellent. Um, Holly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure. I've learned a lot today. It's been excellent. So thank you very
Oh,
much.
yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you have enjoyed the podcast, and I sincerely hope you have, please do like, subscribe, comment on the podcast, share it with a friend. We've got lots of interesting guests coming up over the next few weeks. So yeah, look, hopefully you'll hear them again. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next time. Take care. Bye bye.